this is the sessions section. As many of you know, I was really lucky and did lots and lots of sessions for interesting people. And it wasn't just sessions for music and artists. There were three types of sessions you could do. There was the sessions for different artists that you played on, for singles or for albums. There was also the what we call the film sessions, which you did films, that was either TV films or actual other films. There was what we call jingles, which is your adverts. And the three that stick out for me quite a lot was, there was one I did, it was a session for Anglia TV who did the Survival series. And it was the guy called Howard Blake who actually wrote The Snowman, who used to do all the music for it. And I was booked on the session with a huge big band, and there was one bit where there was some very quiet harpsichord, and I was at the harpsichord right up the back. And of course they close mic'd the harpsichord, and unfortunately I broke wind in the middle of this section, which the conductor Howard Blake didn't hear because it was over there, but obviously the mic picked it up. And I couldn't really stop because it was, but you can't really say, excuse me, so can we do that again? I've just let go. So it stayed on. And interestingly enough, when I actually watched the programme, it was on and they left it in. And I did a jingle, absolute true story, I did a jingle for a wonderful guy called Jerry Shuri, and it was for a German toilet roll company. And I have to say, it was the worst music. The advert was absolutely appalling. And there was me, a drummer called Barry Morgan, and Chris Spedding was on guitar, and I think Les Hurdle was on bass. Those are the names. And we're doing this, and we just can't stop. It's so bad. This advert is so bad. And one of the things with adverts is the directors of the company normally come down to the session. It's their big day out in the studio. They all sit there. And of course, now we've got the half of the SS sitting in the control room. They're all sitting there in their suits listening to this, and we just can't take it seriously. And eventually, they call us in. And they call Jerry in first, the conductor, and he calls us in afterwards. And he said they're not very happy because they don't think you're taking this seriously. I mean, it was hard to take it seriously. It really was a bad ad. And we're sort of like trying to stop sniggering. And Barry Morgan had a great sense of humour. Suddenly went all serious. He said, they're right, lads, we should take this seriously. This is a very, very serious thing that we should be doing here musically. And we went, oh, right. And they went, this is good. This man is good. He understands what we are saying. This is good. And Barry said, yes, people have got a shit to this music. I never did any more jingles after. That was the last jingle I ever did, and Barry. And at the other session, which was for a single, who was the guy who did Kung Fu Fighting? Thank you, Dave. Carl Douglas. I didn't do Kung Fu Fighting, but I did the follow-up, which was called Fire, which we recorded at Advision Studios. And it was just before we went in to do Close to the Edge, funny enough, and or Fragile, one of the two anyway. And they had a Steinway piano there. And I used to smoke in those days. And I was just having an ashtray on the top of the piano. And we were actually doing this track called Fire. Now, you've got to imagine the piano is in this position. There is the glass with the control room. So there's the control desk there. And the producer was a guy called Biddu. And then there was the main engineer who was there. And then behind me was the bass player and the drums and the guitarist and all that. And Carl was also in the control room. Now, we're playing away, and it was a good take that was going, and I had the cigarette, and I had about 3 bars rest where I didn't have to play. And during those 3 bars, I made a grab for the fag, and went to put it back down again after a drag, and knocked it, and it landed on here, this bit here. So the cigarette is now burning on there. Now I'm playing away, and the smoke, and I thought, I'll try and make a grab for it at the next 3 bars rest. Next 3 bars rest. So I pulled this foot, and it shot down and went inside. So it's now rolled inside. So I thought, that's not a problem, it will go. But it landed, it looked worse than it was. It landed on the felts. The piano's got lots of felts inside. So I'm now playing away this track called Fire, and there is smoke billowing out of the, absolutely billowing out. I knew there was problems because I started to lose the sustain pedal because all the felts and these going. But the great thing was looking in the control room, because working the other way around, there's the engineer, and he sort of, he was like, and Biddu, the producer's going, and he looked, he went, the engineer went, and then it was Carl Douglas, and Biddu and Carl, they ran to the side for the fire extinguisher, which was the worst thing they could do. And the engineer's going, I can see him mouthing going. And they came in with this, and they filled the piano full of foam. which all then drips through the bottom. And the great thing was, we were sort of standing at the end of it, and there's just like all this water and foam dripping through the bottom, and the smell of burning and all this sort of thing. And Les Erdel, the bass player, I think it was Les, said, "We'll keep that take then, shall we?" And it was, in fact, the take they kept, because we didn't have another piano. And so one of the most memorable sessions, which was nothing very exciting happened, except it was a very exciting piece to play on, was David Bowie's both Space Oddity and all the Hunky Dory album. And I don't actually tell this, but David phoned me up and invited me round to his house. He used to live in Beckenham, and way before Posh and Beck's, but his house was actually known by all and sundry as Beckenham Palace back then. And I went to the house, and he took out his old battered 12-string acoustic guitar, and he played me all these just great songs, one after the other, for the album Hunky Dory. And he asked me to get bits of paper, write down notes and write down things, which would be the basis of the album, because he wanted it all done sort of piano-orientated. And interestingly enough, I found lots of original things when I was moving, and I found the original notes that I made for Life on Mars, which is quite interesting, because it even includes, when I played it through, I thought, this is weird, this doesn't sound right. And I remember that I'd written down a couple of wrong chords, so I've actually corrected them, but I'll probably play them wrong again tonight. So I thought it would be a bit of fun and to play it exactly after David played it to me on his acoustic guitar. He said, write it down and then play it back to me as you would play it. So this is how I played it back to him for the first time. We ever did it back in 1971. This is Life on Mars.